Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2016 Jeep Renegade, we're going to be showing you how to install the etrailer.com trailer hitch receiver. Before we get into that though, let's take a couple minutes, check it out, and make sure it's going to be right for you. Putting a trailer hitch on a Jeep makes sense. You know, people use these vehicles to do a lot of different things. And so whether you're trying to pull a trailer around, use accessories, or do a little bit of both, this one here is going to get the job done. Compared to some of the other hitches available, they're all going to be pretty similar. In terms of appearance, I feel like this one's probably going to look the best. I just like the finish of it. It has more of a matte black finish. I think it matches the plastic real well on our bumper. There's a Curt one available that's very similar to this, but it has more of a gloss finish. So if that's something you're looking for, you can check that out. And then there's a Draw Tight, which the appearance will be similar, but that one does have a little bit higher weight capacity. So if you kind of plan on, kind of pushing things to the limit a little bit, that one may interest you a little bit more. This hitch is going to be a class 3, which means it has a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, which is a good thing. That's a really common size, so a lot of stuff will work with it. It is going to use that standard 5/8 pin and clip. One doesn't come with the hitch. If you need one, not a huge deal. You can always grab it here at eTrailer, and a lot of times if you end up buying a new accessory, they'll come with one, so just something to look out for. Safety chain openings are plate style, and they're a little small, but they'll still give us enough room to use just about any size hook that our trailer might have on it. Something I want to mention too, this hitch is going to be compatible with all the different types of submodels, including the Trail Hawk. So regardless what you got, it'll bolt up and everything else. And now we'll take some measurements here, and by doing this will help us figure out what type of accessories will work best. And the one thing that's kind of a bummer with all the hitches for the Renegade is the ground clearance. They just sit so low, and that's just kind of the nature of the vehicle. There's really no other way around it. So something to think about for sure when you're picking stuff out. If you go from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, that's going to be about 9.5 inches. So if you plan on towing, you're going to need a ball mount that has a rise in the shank. Probably that 6 to 8 inch range for most people would probably work. And if you're buying a new accessory, if you can get one with the rise in the shank, definitely wouldn't hurt. Buy you a little more space back here. Then we can go from the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper. That's going to be about 6 inches. And you can use that to help figure out that if any folding type accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without hitting the back of your Jeep. Something worth mentioning, if you're concerned with the hitch's ground clearance, especially if you plan on towing some heavier stuff and really loading everything down and you're worried about this squatting down even more, one thing you can do to help combat that is use a suspension enhancement. For example, Sumo Springs makes some helpers that go into the coil springs on the Jeep suspension and help kind of stiffen everything up and help correct that issue. So might be worth looking into if it's something you're interested in. But aside from that, as far as what the hitch is able to handle, it's going to have some decent capacities actually. It's going to have a 525 pound maximum gross tongue weight rating, which is the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. So that's good for pretty much any size bike rack or cargo carrier, to give you an example. As far as the maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, that's going to be 3,500 pounds, or the amount of weight pulling on the hitch. So that's the weight of your trailer, plus anything that you might have in or on it. And it's never a bad idea either just to grab your Jeep's owner's manual. That way you can check in there and make sure that your SUV can handle that much weight safely. Other than that, a trailer hitch that's definitely going to get the job done. As far as the installation goes, I will say the Trail Hawk models are a little bit easier. You use some existing hardware that's already in the frame. With the other models like ours, for example, you have to enlarge some holes and get the hardware in the frame. And it's not that it's complicated, it's just you don't have a ton of room to work down there. So be prepared to kind of fight it a little bit, if you will, and work in some tight spots. But good news is it's something you only have to do one time, and then you can use a hitch from there on out. So stay focused, take your time, you should be in good shape. But that said, why don't we go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be underneath the back of our Jeep, and we're going to be working on our frame rails on each side of the vehicle right here in this area. On the bottom of the frame rail, you're going to have this rubber plug. And I want to mention too, some models you actually have bolts where these locations are going to be. If you do have the bolts, you're going to remove them using, I believe, a 21mm socket. So just keep that in mind. But in our case, we don't have the bolts, so we have these plugs. Take a screwdriver, pop it out, and then they're really tricky to see, so bear with us here. But on the side of the frame, there's 2 more plugs as well, just like that one on the bottom. I went ahead and repeated that same process on this side of our vehicle, and from this point on, whatever we do to one side, we'll also do to the other side, because it'll be set up the same way. Now you can move to your wheel wells, and you don't absolutely have to do this, but it's worthwhile because it makes the install easier. There's this little panel door here, and there's 2 fasteners holding it in. So you have one here and then one just down towards the bottom, exactly the same. And they're plastic Phillips head fasteners. So when you unscrew these, try to do them slow so they kind of grab, so to speak. You can pull it out. And then this door will kind of just pop off like this. What we're going to need to do now is enlarge one of the holes in our frame rail. So this one towards the very back of the car, we're going to use that to get our hardware. And so you can see the size of it. Well, our spacer block and the head of our bolt will not fit through there. And so we're going to enlarge it just big enough to allow those things to pass through. So this is pretty thick steel, to be honest with you. So I advise getting some sharp bits. You can use a step bit, seems to work okay. Grinding type bit. If you have, larger drill bits like this, that'll work. Or honestly, a combination of a few of them. So I'll go ahead and get this opened up here. I got the hole enlarged and found it to kind of speed things up, making it oval. So I used a larger bit to kind of get it going, and then use my grinding bit. It seemed to work out pretty well. But what we're looking for is it to be just big enough to allow your spacer block and the head of the bolt to actually pass through there. I'm not going to push it up in there, I don't get it stuck, but just give an example there. That's what you're trying to do. Now with that said, you see this big thing of caulk here, this sealer. You want to scrape that off. That way it won't get in the way of the hitch. So I just got a screwdriver. You can use a regular scraper, kind of whatever you got. I've even used a multi-tool like this, if you have one, and it'll kind of speed things up as well. So this is what you're looking for here when you scrape off this caulk. You just want the surface to be flat and flush, that way it don't interfere with the hitch. And then we're going to have some more on the side of our frame rail to scrape off as well. So I'll just get that done and show you what it looks like. Here's kind of a side of what we're working with here. So on the side, you're going to have a bead here, and then kind of some just up towards the top. The same holds true with the attachment point further towards the front of our car. So just get all this stuff cleaned off and removed. For our side attachment points, we have this hole, and then of course the one in front of it. What you can do is start to get the hardware in place. So you take coiled end of your fish wire, all right, and put it through the hole. And then what you're trying to do is get the coiled end to actually drop out of that hole that we enlarged. All right, and so when you got it like that, you take a spacer block, carriage bolt. You're going to thread the carriage bolt onto the fish wire. All right, and then feed the hardware up in the frame one at a time. You're going to pull it out, make sure it seats and everything, but then you can kind of push it just right back in. That way it doesn't interfere with the hitch when you go to put it up. So I'm going to use that same technique and the same hardware combination to get the forward hole on the side of our frame as well. For this hole now that we got both of our side bolts in, you can take that same hardware combination, but this time put the spacer block on the wire and thread the carriage bolt. So then you're going to reverse fish wire this. So put the head of the bolt in first, then the spacer block. And get it to drop back through. Like that. Make sure it's sitting flat on the frame. And I think what I might do actually is come back with some paint, since we had some bare metal. Come back with some paint, hit that, and give it a minute to dry. So now with some help here, we can get the hitch into position. And what you're going to do, take your pull wires and put them through the corresponding holes in the hitch. So the ones on the side of a frame, you're going to kind of push through from the inside out. It kind of helps if you put a bend in the end of the wire. It helps it from wanting to come back out. So I'll get them up. Everything's just super tight, so what I'm trying to do is get it close and then pull our fish wires. That way the side bolts will come through the hitch and keep it supported. So once the bolts are pulled through and the hitch is kind of in place, we can get some of the hardware going. So with this bottom one, move the pull wire and then take another spacer block. All right, that will go over the bolt. And then take a flange nut. Get that started hand tight. As far as the side bolts go, these you're just going to put on a flange nut. You're not going to have to worry about another spacer block or anything. So with that all done, we can start to get everything tightened down. To tighten the bolts, you can use a 3/4 inch or 19mm socket. And with all of these, honestly, I like to put a swivel on it and use an extension. It just makes it easier, honestly. Tighten up the bottom one and then do the sides. With the side ones, use that combination I told you with the swivel. And I'm coming in through the actual side panel to tighten these down. With everything snug, you need to make sure and come back with a torque wrench and tighten down all the hardware to the amount specified in your instructions. Once you have the hitch all torqued down, come back to your wheel wells and simply reinstall those little panels the opposite way that you removed them. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the etrailer.com trailer hitch receiver on our 2016 Jeep Renegade.